No doubt about it, Marylanders are excited about voting. 125,000 casting ballots Thursday, the first day of early voting. 9,500 right here in Baltimore. A USA Today Suffolk University poll reports Hillary Clinton's lead over Donald Trump approaching 10%. But Gonzalez research shows it much, much tighter. Now with the momentum, they say, going toward Trump. 51% of Americans fear Election Day violence, while many Trump supporters say they will not recognize a win by Hillary Clinton. What a race. Dick Gelfman, take off.
You know, you think there's gridlock in Washington now? No matter who gets elected, there's going to be gridlock like you've never seen before.
Ken Ravenel.
I'm going to say something positive. What I like about this is that early voting shows that people are getting out and voting.
Robin Murphy.
As of Friday, 538 still said she had about an 81+ chance of winning. So I don't think the race is as tight because polls are skewed. And also rigged.
Rabbi Mitchell Walberg.
We were told as kids that anyone could become president of the United States. Now we know it's true.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Square Off. I'm Richard Scher, and here we go. The big election is here, and we're brought to you by the law offices of Peter Angelos as a public service. And if you or a loved one has been hurt because of someone else's negligence, call 1-800-556-5522. Schedule your free consultation. I guarantee you'll be glad you did.
Just in case you haven't heard, we're winning, not only Florida, but we're going to win the whole thing.
People are coming together. Democrats, Republicans, and independents, all to reject hate and division that sets Americans against one another.
All right, Ken Ravenel, take off.
I got to tell you that many people have said it, we've all said it, this has been a very difficult time to even watch what is happening in our country. But I think it's important, as I said, what started out is that people are voting. I certainly believe that Clinton is going to win. It's very tight. Maybe not as tight as some say, but I think, I saw polls over the weekend, suggesting on Friday that she's up by 12 points. I think that's probably more realistic, like 8. I think she's going to win, but it's going to be tough.
She's an extraordinarily flawed candidate, as everyone has said, and that's why people sometimes find it not palatable, what she does. At the same time, I see that rooted in a bunch of sexism, because a lot of the things over a 30-year or whatever course of public life and public service, there are going to be things that have been distasteful, possibly, that people disagree with. But a lot of the disagreements with Hillary, whether we want to say it or not, they're rooted in the fact that she's a girl.
The emails show a lot more than that. I mean, for a girl, she can be pretty salty, number one. She orders things that the other side, she exposes it in these emails as to what really goes on. And I'm not saying the other side's any better. I'm not saying, boy, if you looked at the Trump campaign, you'd find nothing but beautiful emails. But this has really ignited things, and I think if it hadn't have been Trump, who I think is probably the only candidate that could not have beaten Hillary, but if it hadn't have been Trump, I think more attention would have been paid to those emails.
Listen, as a rabbi, I can't endorse any particular candidate. I would say that I find Trump to be a disgusting human being. And perhaps the most disgusting thing he's doing is putting into people's minds doubts about the results of the election. In my lifetime, I don't remember any candidate doing that. We always understood whoever wins, wins, and it was accepted as such. All of a sudden now he's planting into minds of millions of people not to accept the results, and that undermines the whole basis of democracy.
And before that, and continuing, what he also did is to tell people, the underclass that are white and male, that they're losing because of people of other races and other genders, and that is dangerous.
Well, I'll tell you, back to the email issue you mentioned, I think it would be interesting to see what we could find if we looked at Trump's email and others. But I tell you what's most troubling is the fact that Trump will not come out and say what many believe, the experts, that the Russians are behind it. And that says something about him. I mean, he constantly comes out and talks about Putin. And just on Friday, he's talking about how, Hillary is not being fair to Putin. This guy will never say that Putin's a bad guy, and everyone believes it.
What hard evidence do you have, though, Ken, that it is in any way related to...
Oh, we have 17 national security experts who say that they believe it's
Without
Russian.
any evidence.
Well,
All
no,
the proofs
that's,
are-
that's not
No,
any evidence.
through-
They've
Where's
done
the
their own
evidence?
analysis to come up with this. Look, I'm not saying that it's proof.
I am almost
but
sure
but
that
why
they're
would
not
you
allowed
defend
to
him?
tell us.
I'm not saying that it's proof, but why defend the guy? Why defend the
I
Russians?
don't read what he says as defending the guy. I heard him the other day say something like, I don't know that it's a bad thing that we get along with him. Is that necessarily supporting him? I mean,
Yes.
there
Yes,
used to
let me
be
give
a
you an
time
example.
when
He's
the
supporting-
president was
Go ahead.
supporting Gorbachev.
Let me give you an example when he supported. When he comes out and he says things like, Putin is a better president than Obama. Putin is a better president, and he mentions this other person too as well. You know, one of the other bad guys is better than President Obama. Whenever you say that about a president of this country, you are in fact supporting Putin, and there's no reason to do that at all.
He has said, well, Putin thinks highly of me, so I think highly of him. That's the way we make decisions. Putin, who invaded Crimea and the Ukraine and who is bombing, killing tens of thousands in Syria. There's anything nice to say
But
about
my
him?
real problem is he alternately is good friends with Putin and has never met him and doesn't know Putin. And I think that he does that on so many different occasions that the only thing that baffles me about this election is that people think he is a little more trustworthy than him. When he literally will say something, be filmed saying it, have been on the record saying it, have it in a book authored by himself, and then stand in front of the American people and say, I never said that, I never did that, I never wrote that, and everyone knows he in fact did.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's what happens in a campaign. Look at what he's saying now. He says, this is rigged, it's terrible. The first thing he said in a speech the other night was, did you see how much I'm up in poll such and such? I don't know, wait a minute.
Only
You
the
just got-
polls against him are rigged.
Right, well, yes,
No,
I mean, that's the
guy loves
implication.
polls when he's winning on the polls.
But I don't know that that's different than any other politician does. I mean,
Well, I don't think they all call it
doesn't
rigged.
bother me too
They don't say that it's rigged. They might say we don't believe the polls, but I don't think they say